In this presentation, I'm going to run through the individual summative assessment for the pain management module. And by that, I mean the reflective account that you're going to write about the case that you presented in your formative assessment. Now, it may be, and that's perfectly acceptable, that since doing the study, you've decided to choose a different case. That's also fine. Just treat it as if it was your formative. Okay, so if we start with the important information that you're going to need to know, the submission window is now open, and it's also important that you find out the date for the closure of the submission window. So this is the deadline. The reason why it's important is that if you do not meet the deadline, so if you miss the deadline and you haven't had that approved by us in the form of an extension or a deferral or something like that, then you will be penalised. If you submit in the 7 days after the submission window closed, your grade will be capped at 50%. And if it's later than that, then it is unfortunately classed as a fail at first attempt. And the reason for this is that the university classes it as a matter of academic integrity for you to be able to meet deadlines. So if you feel that you're not going to be able to do that, you must get in touch with us as soon as possible. And we'll discuss your particular circumstances and see if there's something that we can put in place so that you're not penalised. If it comes to the fact that you'll need to do a resit, and remember for this module, you don't necessarily have to fail everything in order to fail a module overall. So the failure of the module overall depends on what your grade is overall. But if you do have to do a resit, this will happen in the 4 weeks following the return of the marks. So you'll get your mark back and then you'll have another 4 weeks in which to do the resit. If you do have to do a resit, the grade will be capped at 50%, unless, as I've said earlier, there's some mechanism in place under the personal and extenuating circumstances procedure. If you don't know where to find this information, this is a screenshot from the module itself. You'll find it all right at the beginning of the module section in a section all dedicated to assessment, information and deadlines. The assessment strategy for this particular module was something that we thought quite long and hard about. And what we wanted to do was to assess very broadly all the various ways in which people perhaps choose to learn or have a natural preference to learning, or indeed to fit in with their how they manage their study in terms of their professional background. So what I'm trying to say is there's two components to this, as you know. There's the group task and there's the individual task. So the group task was very much assessing your ability to produce information. It's not reflective, but it was a collaborative task. So that's social learning. So learning with each other to produce this knowledge artifact. The individual reflection is much more around your ability to individually reflect on the learning experiences and what they mean to you and your professional work. So this is what I mean by some professional backgrounds are much more confident and comfortable with the reflection aspect of learning and that individual reflection. Others are much more around knowledge retrieval and knowledge production. So we didn't want anybody to feel at a disadvantage because it wasn't a way of learning that came either naturally to them or that was relevant to their profession. So overall, the overall assessment strategy is it should hit all of these various domains. So just if you were wondering where it came from, you'll have seen this this model previously in the session that I did around the group task. Bloom's taxonomy of learning is a way for us to classify the various levels of learning in terms of complexity. So what you expect an undergraduate to do wouldn't be the same as what we expect of yourselves as master's level students. And the group task was all around producing a new piece of work, that new guideline that was demanded evaluation analysis of all the information, but to synthesize it and to produce something new. This is lower down the taxonomy, if you like. It's no less demanding because it's around how you as an individual are able to analyze your learning and apply it to your own context and your own work. It's still more complicated than a sort of piece of reflection that we would expect of an undergraduate. Equally demanding, it's just in terms of the taxonomy at a different level. Okay. So what is reflective learning? Some of you will be more familiar with this concept, perhaps more comfortable with it. But the point of reflective learning is that it's an opportunity for you to, first of all, identify any assumptions that you may have around a particular topic. But perhaps more powerfully than that, you can challenge those assumptions. So perhaps you assume a particular area of pain management, and actually you've had the opportunity to challenge that assumption. Maybe the evidence base for that isn't as strong as you thought. Maybe there are other alternative explanations, other things you could try. Maybe pharmacological interventions aren't the only option. Perhaps non-pharmacological interventions are more acceptable than you previously thought. What we do know about reflective learning is it's particularly beneficial in those circumstances that are complex, where there isn't an easy answer. And as we've shown through the discussions, as we've worked through the topic, that is quite often the case when it comes to pain management. And it allows you to consider things from a much broader perspective. So perhaps things like the non-pharmacological management, or being able to have a better understanding of the consequences of some of the pharmacological interventions in terms of side effects and how they are affecting your patients. So this is why we've put in an assignment that's all around reflective learning. Now, what you will be interested in is where you get the marks. So I'll quickly run through this and then I'll show you where you can find more detail about this in the module itself. You will get 10% of your marks come from the content. So is it relevant to the subject, which is pain management? Is it sufficiently able to stretch you and so that you can demonstrate your knowledge gains? Presentation, make sure it's clear, easy to read, follows the suggested structure, which I'll talk to you in a moment about. Use at least 0.11 font with at least 1.5 spacing, because that makes it much easier to read. This is the sort of thing that we're looking for in terms of presentation. It's got to be a professionally presented piece of work. Now, critical analysis, synthesis, and application to practice all score 20% of your overall mark. So I'll look at these sections in turn, because together they account for the majority of the marks. In reflective learning, yes, it's around your individual learning and what you've learned, but this is a master's level piece of work. So we want to see those higher level skills. In terms of critical analysis, this is how you interrogate the evidence base. So don't just accept things on face value. If you sort of scrutinize at least one or two pieces of evidence to make some sort of comment around the study itself? Was it relevant and relatable to what you see in your day-to-day practice? Perhaps it was from a different context. Perhaps the numbers were quite small in the particular study. Perhaps, again, there's an assumption in there, and a study, a piece of research is actually challenging that. In terms of synthesis, this relates to how you draw all of those pieces of information together. So critical analysis will come first, and then synthesis is really how you bring all those various research findings, guidelines, practice that you're seeing in your own work, maybe audits relating to your own work, how you bring that together to formulate an argument. So it could be strongly in favour of something. It could actually be running counter to accepted wisdom, if you like, or it could be a combination of the two. So you could say, be aware of, or apply with caution. Those sort of what we call hedging comments are quite important as well. And then application to practice is how you're going to translate this into your practice. So there should be a clear, what we call a golden thread from analysing the evidence, bringing it together and synthesising with what you're seeing in your day-to-day practice, and then how you're going to take that forward into your day-to-day practice. 10% of your grade comes from articulating complexity because, as I've said before, reflective learning is particularly suited to these complex problems where there are no easy answers. So you're not really going to be able to demonstrate to me that you've learned a lot from this module if you simply say, well, I didn't know much about, for instance, methadone, so I went and looked up the methadone guidelines, and now I follow the guidelines, and now I'm more confident about using methadone, because that's something that you could have done without studying this particular module. References will provide 5% of the marks, so follow your stipulated referencing conventions. You can find guidance on that in the university library website. Just go into the website, and in the search box you can put referencing. It's in the academic skills kit as well. So again, you can do a search for academic skills kit Newcastle University, and you'll find lots of resources that will help you in various aspects of your study there as well. So it's worth checking that out. And then 5% of the grade comes from originality. Now, this is going to be an original piece of work in terms of it relates to your particular area of practice. So it's something that's important to you and therefore unique. But what I also want to see is perhaps that you're providing a fresh perspective. Now, this is a fresh perspective for you. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that I've never seen or heard before. If it is, that's great, because I always learn. But show me that there is some sort of new perspective that you've seen, and you will score in that area. To find more detailed information and to submit your assignment, it's in week 16 of the course. The date here relates to the date that that it's due, and then that'll run for a week. So once you click into that, it'll give you more specific information. And that will change year on year, depending on how the timetable runs. And then once you go into week 16, and this page, Summative Assessment, Individual Reflective Account, here it tells you how you would submit it by a file upload, and this is the deadline. So this is the important part. And this time here is UK time. We do take into account if you are in a part of the world where this isn't particularly convenient. So we don't penalise you and expect you to, be up in the early hours of the morning to submit. But what I would say to all of you is please, please, please do not leave it up until the deadline, because we do not generally accept technical issues that are within your control as an acceptable mitigating factor. So give yourself plenty of time to submit. You can submit again, so you can submit and then say, okay, I've got that one in, but that's not my final one. I just need to tweak it a bit, and then I can put the final version in. So you can overwrite your submissions. If you do that, do make a note that you've done it, because we do occasionally have people who submit drafts by mistake. The rest of this page is the marking rubric. So this is the actual piece of, I want to say document, it's more like a piece of software within Canvas that we use to mark. So I would suggest that everybody goes into that page and has a look at it specifically, but you'll see the criteria here are the ones that I've just talked about, and similarly the number of points. And then in each box, if you like, it tells you the sort of things that we're looking for. These are not absolutely prescriptive, so you will get qualitative feedback as well. The important thing is the banding here. So if you were going to, for content to get a pass, I would expect this. Any less than this, you won't get a pass. So that's just to make you aware of that. In terms of the actual writing the assignment, you can follow these headings to structure it if you want. You may find it easier to think of your own subheadings if you like. But I'll just run through this model. It's based on, some of you will be familiar with this, Gibbs reflective cycle, and we're coming into it at this point, so at the experience point. So this is what you submitted for your formative, or if you've chosen a different case since your formative, you'll still be coming in at this point. When you do write it, I've already advised a couple of you who've been in contact, you don't need to go into a lot of detail in the reflective account around the circumstances of your case. You can attach the post that you wrote for your formative as an appendix and refer to that for more detail. It's really just around setting the scene, if you like. Here's where we'll draw marks for the content section of that marking rubric. You'll then move on to define the pain problem. So what is the pain problem that this case is bringing to light that you are now going to address? So that's really important, because without that, the structure falls. The next section is around the information. So that's the information part. So in here, tell me about the pain problem. Any facts, any figures, any evidence, and by that, yes, draw from the published literature, and remember to critically analyze at least one or two key publications in that area, or something interesting that's come to light. Okay. Then you're going to reflect on this new knowledge in light of your experiences. And this is your synthesis part. Now, it doesn't have to be all your experiences. You could talk to other members of your team. Perhaps there's something that's appeared on the back of a critical incident, or that's in your professional circles. That would all count as experience. But the point of the reflection is, how is the new knowledge, how is it standing up against what you see in practice, or what we know is happening in practice? So this is your reflective insights. And from these reflective insights, and this is where we come to challenging our assumptions, you will form what we'll call your former theory. So what will you do differently now? And this is your application to practice. So you can see here, we've got this golden thread of critical analysis, synthesis, application to practice, but it's following that reflective cycle from defining the problem to scrutinizing the evidence base to reflecting on what's happening in actual practice to forming new practice. Okay, and then the final part of this is to test the theory, to put it into practice. So does it stand up to your new assumptions, or is it actually aligning with your old assumptions? Is what you're putting into practice workable? It isn't strictly within the scope of this assignment, so I'm not expecting you to do this. If, however, you have done it and you want to put it in, that's absolutely fine. It is enough to say, going forwards, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And for those of you who maintain professional development portfolios, say for your training, appraisal, that sort of thing, this would fit really nicely in with that as well. So that's another advantage of doing reflective learning here. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a call to action. And by that, I mean, what is the real purpose for doing this? Why are we actually doing this? And yes, it is to get a good grade so you can get your qualification and you can do well career-wise. But I always think more importantly, we are doing this for our patients. So if you can keep in mind that the whole motivation for this is to improve patient care, to do something better, differently, more efficiently, more cost effectively, but ultimately to improve the experience of our patients, then you are on the right lines. And if you can take that forwards, so yes, it's lovely to get your qualification and to get a nice mark and to feel great, but actually this is really all about patient care. And I urge you not to forget that, because that will keep you going throughout your studies and beyond. Any problems at all, you can email myself or you can email Paul, who's the module co-leader. Paul will be involved in marking your assignments with myself as part of the quality assurance program. And that's just to make sure that everything's moderated and done correctly. Okay, that's all I have to say for this presentation. Good luck, and I look forward to working with you all in future assignments and hopefully beyond.